5 or 6 minutes left before the bells start ringing, and several members who still have questions. Senator Platt.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, one comment, Professor Thomas. You talked about the system that we have in Manitoba, and I was very involved in the last provincial election in Manitoba, and I would certainly disagree that we didn't have massive voter fraud in Manitoba in the last election with the system. I believe that there was massive voter fraud in the last election in Manitoba, but that's a comment. You made one for the record, and I wanted to at least put that on the record that I disagree with the comment that you made.
The former chief electoral officer speaking in Manitoba a week ago said that the system of declaration voting had worked over 2 general elections without serious problems. I don't remember any reports issued by Elections Manitoba to the effect that there was rampant voter impersonation going on.
Well, I certainly would disagree with his report. You state, Professor Thomas, that you do not support the dropping of the position of the Commissioner of Canada Elections from within the administrative framework of Elections Canada, placing it under the Director of Public Prosecutions. We've had a few witnesses that disagree with your position there, including one that was here just before you, when she said the present system she believed is a muddled reporting system. And so I would like your comment as to why you think this is a bad thing. I would like Professor Wiseman to give us his comment, because I don't think that you addressed that particular point in your statement. So I would like to hear your comments on that as well, and then I will very quickly ask the other question before the chair cuts me off, and that is that you spoke very, very briefly about the donations system and the increase, and you said you were okay with increasing it to $1,500. Again, Professor Howe, I think was his name, was very opposed to it and wanted to reduce it to the Quebec system of $100. I believe, certainly our party, and I believe other parties too, collect the vast majority of their money from $100 donations and not from $1,500 donations. So I would like to hear your comments. The Conservative Party, I think their average donation is still under $100 per donation and under $200 annually. So I would like to hear your comments on whether you think that that is the right amount.
Quickly, 3 points on relocating the Commissioner of Elections. First, you're moving it from within an officer of Parliament, which is insulated to a greater extent from political pressures. Is situated within a department. There's a risk that the individual will be subject to the communications restrictions of a department. The New Zealand example, they moved away from having 3 separate election-related functions housed in different parts of government departments and put them all under a consolidated 3-person electoral commission with a judge as the head. I think the trend everywhere that I've examined is towards integration. There's an organic relationship between the activities of Elections Canada and the Commissioner, so I think that that will be lost. I worry about the Treasury Board placing budgetary limits. There was, from 2005 to 2012, a speakers panel on financing and accountability of officers of Parliament. That body has ceased to operate now. That was a protection against the government stifling these bodies. And finally, well, I guess I'll finish on that. On the donations one, Senator Platt, I'd say this, that I agree with the increase in the donation limits. In the studies I did as Party Allowance Commissioner in Manitoba, I came to recognize and appreciate in a first-hand way that parties need resources, both money and other types of resources, to perform crucial functions within. If you cut off one source of funding, such as annual subsidies, then you have to give them more room, and if you ban corporate and trade union dues. So parties need to raise money, but they need to do it in as transparent and accountable way as possible. And I think there's some accountability elements missing from the bill in terms of party fundraising and spending.
I think Mr. Wiseman wanted to make a comment.
Very briefly,
And
Professor.
Chair, I would like to read something for the record, just on a question that was asked, if I could. Very brief.
Do you want to do that first, or?
Well, no, I'll wait for Mr. Wiseman, or Professor
Okay,
Wiseman.
well, I'm moving the Commissioner of Elections under the Director of Public Prosecutions. I don't have a problem with that because I believe both the Director and the Commissioner will do their jobs. I think the issue here is whether the budget of the Commissioner is going to be restricted by the government through the Treasury Board. On the $1,500 on the finance issue, my feeling is fine. $1,500 is fine. To stop this from being an issue, why don't we just establish it at $1,500 and link it to inflation? I think the real issue with finance is all the money that's going into advertising before the writ is dropped. And lastly, because we're all Manitobans, and you brought up the issue of fraud in the last election, and I wrote a book chapter on the last election, and I didn't see it, and the media always look for this. I didn't see any reports of this. The main fraud that existed in Manitoba was the introduction of a bogus independent Aboriginal candidate, as you know, by the Conservative Party in the 1990s, which led to the NDP government, which is still in power.
Professor, I will thank you.
We'll debate that later on. Chair, if I could very quickly,
please.
There was the question raised about whether voter cards are going to be sent out, and we've got some information here that we believe that voter cards, Elections Canada will still send them out. You will just not be able to use them as ID. Important information on where and when to vote.
Okay.
That information will still
The
be
last
sent out.
question goes to Senator Cowan.
I think we've got to vote.
Okay, you sir, we will.
Well, I was just,
Why
I
don't
can
you
ask
get
a
it on
question, and maybe if the two professors would care to comment, I can ask it quickly. I think we all agree that, you know, the importance of allowing and encouraging people and facilitating the right of people to vote, and we also agree that it's a very important thing that everybody, as many people as possible, believe in the integrity of the electoral system and the management of it. How should we proceed? And we'd also agree that there's a lot of controversy about the current attempt to reform the system. Could you think about this and perhaps send us a note, if you wouldn't mind, as to how you think we should proceed in the future to deal with this important question? What's the proper process to follow to achieve what I believe, and I think you believe as well, is an important consensus amongst Canadians that the system is has an overriding integrity to it?
I won't keep you from our vote, but I'll say quickly in one sentence almost. 2009 reforms to the Party and Elections Act in the UK set parameters on the role of the Electoral Commission in outreach to voters. It was all about the basics, the mechanics of voting, and limited to the issue of whether some groups had the adequate information. It wasn't about motivation. It was about identifying target groups that needed additional support in order to vote. The language is in the bill. It could be imported very easily. And you should talk to Peter Wardle of the Electoral Commission in the UK, because he could give you chapter and verse and better than I could. Thank you.
Yes, Senator Joyal.
Was wanted to know where the royalties of the book went. They were all donated to the government from the beginning. So I'm sorry, they are not in my pocket. I cannot give them back to you.
Gentlemen, thank you both for a very informative and helpful contribution to our deliberations. And we meet again, members, here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Meeting